The Jets are looking for their fourth straight win this weekend against the Denver Broncos. Today, I'm joining the guys at Locked On Broncos to talk about the key matchups in this game. Cody of Locked On Broncos will lead us back in as we begin today's episode of the Locked On Jets podcast.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is Crossover Thursday all across the Locked On Podcast Network. Week 7 of NFL action is officially here. And we're going to break things down for Locked On Broncos and Locked On Jets. Just want to say thank you so much to everybody tuning in, whether you're a Broncos fan or whether you're a New York Jets fan, tuning in and making these respective shows your first listen of the day, whether you listen on your favorite audio podcasting platform or whether you watch on YouTube. All of us, we appreciate you. We're going to set the table for Sunday's matchup, an AFC West versus AFC East showdown between a 4-2 New York Jets team and a 2-4 Denver Broncos team. What universe are we currently living in right now? We'll break everything down. Obviously, I'm Cody Roark, host of Locked On Broncos, joined alongside by co-host Sayre Bedinger, and we're joined alongside to get the New York Jets perspective from John Butchko, host of the Locked On Jets podcast. So, gentlemen, let's waste no time. John, I want to open things up here. When we talk about the biggest story for this game, from a Locked On Jets perspective coming into Sunday's matchup, what is the biggest story with this New York Jets team?
It's that the Jets are playing competitive football this year. They're 4-2. It's a bit of a surprise. I think heading into this season, expectations were not that this team was going to have a winning record. It was the elusive progress, because it's a team that maybe on the whole is not particularly young. They've added a lot of veterans this year, but the key players to this team are mostly young guys, and they're all contributing. And sometimes you see it in the NFL. When young guys all hit at once, your team ends up being ahead of schedule. You know, you see a team like this every year, and the Jets are getting great play right now. Quinnen Williams in year 4 is making a leap. He looks like a star level player. Prior to this year, Quinnen Williams was a good player. I don't think you could say he was a disappointment, 3rd overall pick in 2019, but he was not the difference maker that a lot of Jets fans were hoping for. He's playing at I'd say an all-pro level right now, and I don't say that lightly. He's been unblockable the last couple of weeks. You have a corner that they Jets drafted 4th overall this year, Sauce Gardner, who stepped in. He's immediately been a shutdown corner. On the offensive side of the ball, you have a running back, Breece Hall, who in a league where the running back position, let's face it, has been devalued. In fact, your Broncos, if you go back to the Mike Shanahan days, had a lot to do with the devaluation of the running back position. You want to go back to the 90s, but there still are a handful of backs who can carry an offense. And maybe it's a little early to say that with Breece Hall, but the last couple of weeks, he's looked dynamic. 2 weeks ago against Miami, he had 97 rushing yards, 100 receiving yards. So he came 3 yards short of a 100-100 game. Last week against Green Bay, Jets really were struggling passing the ball, and he ran for 116 yards. He essentially was the offense. So, you know, as much as anything, guys, I was the original host of Locked On Jets. I've been doing this since 2016. I have never had a competitive Jets team to talk about. I've never had a team that was making noise in the AFC. It's a new feeling for me to not be talking about how I wish the Jets were some other team. So really, it's just the Jets. It looks like they've, you know, you're always one losing streak away from falling out of the race. I think no Jets fan is going to take anything for granted, but it's a team that actually looks like it's making steps. It's a team that looks like it's actually going to be in the mix in the AFC this year.
Well, as Robert Saleh would say, receipts. I'm a big Gary Vee fan. Gary Vee and I follow each other on Twitter. I know he's a massive New York Jets fan, and I've got the video saved of him doing the receipts conversation there. I know he was in Green Bay last week. We'll see if he goes to Denver here. Obviously, the New York Jets playing really good football right now at 4-2 after a little bit of a sluggish start. All to be expected a little bit without Zach Wilson, though. But the defense finding their rhythm under Robert Saleh right now. And things right now, if you're a Jets fan, seem very good. Now I'm going to flip the script a little bit here. Now, Sayre, from a Locked On Broncos perspective, what is the biggest story for the Denver Broncos heading into Sunday's matchup at home against the New York Jets team?
Well, I think the number one thing, Cody, right now for everybody in Broncos country is what is going to be going down with Russell Wilson, right? Because we found out a couple weeks ago he's got the lat injury. Then we find out after Monday Night Football, well, all of a sudden he's got a hamstring injury that affected him there late in the fourth quarter. Nathaniel Hackett talked about how they had to adjust the playbook for that injury. But now Russell Wilson says he's got a little bit of that Wolverine blood. He's healing quickly out there. So it'll be interesting to monitor not only his health status, but I think most importantly, if he's out there on the field, is he going to be able to operate at a high level? Because the Broncos offense, the concerns are multiple right now. I wish there was a Breece Hall that we could point to say he is the offense right now, because there's really nobody like that in Denver at the moment. Obviously, Javonte Williams injured. Obviously, you don't have Tim Patrick, and haven't had Tim Patrick. There's just not been consistency from the offensive line, as well as injuries on the offensive line to some key players, by the way. Left tackle Garrett Bowles probably being the most notable at this point, Cody. Russell Wilson, he is the storyline going into every week until things get fixed there for that Denver Broncos offense. He is the number one storyline, in my opinion.
And one of the things, too, that really stands out to me, and John, this will probably make Jets fans really excited. Russell Wilson's been sacked 20 times so far this season. And you mentioned Quinnen Williams. I mean, I just watched some teach tape from him from this past weekend against Green Bay, where he took the Green Bay Packers offensive line, shoved him backwards, made him fall down, and he was right in Aaron Rodgers' lap at that point there. He is playing dominant football right now, and Russell Wilson and the Broncos offense, quite frankly, through the first 7 weeks of the season, have given up way too much pressure, way too much contact, which has contributed to Russ being banged up a little bit. And he pulled his hamstring trying to escape pressure in the fourth quarter against the Los Angeles Chargers on Monday Night Football. But I think that is probably the biggest story here. Is Russell Wilson going to play? Now, if he's not able to, it will be Brett Rippon taking on the New York Jets once again, a rematch from 2020 where Brett Rippon was able to get the Broncos their first win. So could Brett Rippon come in and interject some life and energy into the Broncos offense? That is a major question that we'll be monitoring from the Broncos side, as well as Jets fans will be monitoring for Sunday's game at Empower Field at Mile High. But coming up here in just a moment, if you're a Broncos fan, if you're a Jets fan, we're going to dive into some of the key matchups we're most looking forward to seeing. We're going to highlight a couple of star cornerbacks and young cornerbacks that are making headlines across the NFL. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about Blue Nile, the sponsor of today's crossover episode, Locked On Broncos and Locked On Jets. And whether you're looking to pop the question, have a milestone to celebrate, or want to let your love sparkle, Blue Nile can help you make your celebrations even more memorable. As the original online jeweler, Blue Nile offers the largest selection of independently graded diamonds and pieces priced significantly below traditional retailers. Blue Nile has helped millions of couples create their perfect engagement ring, and their easy online tools let you choose the diamond shape, the size, clarity, and as well as the setting style. And Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then help you handcraft her perfect one-of-a-kind engagement ring. Looking for a piece of fine jewelry to commemorate a special milestone but still having trouble choosing? Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Make your moment sparkle with Blue Nile. Go to BlueNile.com and use code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. That's BlueNile.com, code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. BlueNile.com, code LOCKEDON. As we continue this crossover episode here across the Locked On Podcast Network, breaking down the Denver Broncos hosting the New York Jets. The Jets traveling to Denver to take on a struggling Denver Broncos team. We just want to say thank you so much, whether you're a Broncos fan or Jets fan, for tuning in and making these shows your first listen of the day. Free and available everywhere you get your podcasts in audio format, or whether you watch on YouTube. John, keeping the conversation going here as we dive deeper into this matchup on Sunday between the 4-2 New York Jets and the 2-4 Denver Broncos. There are several key players and really good players on both teams, on both sides of the ball. But more importantly, from a Locked On Jets perspective, what are some of the matchups or a matchup that you're most looking forward to watching this Sunday when these two teams battle?
Well, I think when the Jets have the ball, what I have my eyes on are the right side of the offensive line, because the Jets staple play in the run game, and this has really become a run-based offense the last couple of weeks. Jets really have not gotten a ton from their passing game. Jets' staple play on offense is the wide zone, and they like to run right more than they run left. And I was looking at the way the Broncos defensive lines, and sometimes you'll get Bradley Chubb on that side, but it seems like Bradley Chubb's more frequently going to line up against the left tackle. So I'm looking Jets right tackle Elijah Vera-Tucker versus Baron Browning, because Denver needs to set the edge. The Jets' run game's been very good the last couple of weeks, and when you're playing the wide zone, the most important thing, or the first thing you have to do, is set the edge. Vera-Tucker's interesting story this year. He was the Jets' left guard last year as a rookie out of USC. Jets originally slid him over to right guard because they signed Laken Tomlinson from San Francisco. Tomlinson, veteran, mostly has played left guard in recent years. So rather than force him to switch sides, they moved Vera-Tucker to right guard. Jets suffer a lot of injuries at tackle. Jets have had 4 tackles on injured reserve at various points this year. They just got Dwayne Brown back, who was a guy they signed in training camp after Mekhi Becton got hurt. Against Pittsburgh a few weeks ago, Vera-Tucker moved to left tackle. Then Brown came back, so they kicked him over to right tackle. So Elijah Vera-Tucker's played 3 positions this year, none of which were the position he played last year, but he's played very well in all those spots. He's looking like a guy who maybe can stick at the tackle position, which is a bit of a surprise because everybody thought coming out of USC that he was going to be a guard. He's playing really well. And, Breece Hall's shown good vision. And of course, on the wide zone play, even if you set the edge, if your running back can find a hole somewhere, he'll be able to hit it, make one cut, get up the field. But the most important, the first thing is setting the edge. And if Vera-Tucker can win this matchup, Jets run game could have a big day. On the other side of the ball, I think you got to look to Quinnen Williams. He's playing so well. And listen, there are lots of Jets defensive linemen who are playing effectively right now. John Franklin Myers, a guy who plays a little bit of end, a little bit of tackle. He'll slide inside, outside, depending on the situation. He's looking really good. Sheldon Rankins, tackle, who plays next to Quinnen Williams for the most part. Not great last year, having a big bounce back year. You have Carl Lawson, who missed the entire season last year. He was a big free agent signing in 2021. I don't think he's playing at the level his salary commands, but I still think he's pretty effective right now. You have Bryce Huff, a situational pass rusher, who's getting to the quarterback at a decent rate, but Quinnen Williams is the guy. This Jets defensive line at the beginning of the season, there was talent. You saw lots of good players. It wasn't clear that they had that one guy, though, who was going to keep offensive coordinators up at night. And the last couple of weeks, it has become Quinnen Williams. Again, you'll see him line up at both spots. I think he's going to line up more frequently. He tends to line up more frequently against the left guard. So I guess that's Dalton Reisner. So that's the matchup I'm looking at, because Quinnen Williams, and it's always difficult to deal with pressure up the middle, especially if either you're dealing with a backup quarterback or even if Russell Wilson's playing banged up and maybe he's not able to move as well. That's a big matchup for the Jets. And if Quinnen Williams has a big day, I mean, we saw it last week. He kind of just I don't want to say he single-handedly destroyed Green Bay's offense, but he was the biggest factor in the dominant performance the Jets had on the defensive side of the ball.
He was evident on tape there. And look, there's a multitude of players, as you mentioned, Quinnen Williams, who's just an absolute stud on that defensive line there. Some other guys I know we'll talk about here in a little bit. But Sayre, kind of flipping things to a Locked On Broncos perspective for this matchup on Sunday in Power Field, the Mile High, 2:25 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff, obviously 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff for everybody in New York. What are some of the key matchups that you have your eye on specifically for this game on Sunday?
Well, as John mentioned, you're looking at Elijah Vera-Tucker at the right tackle position going up against Baron Browning and Bradley Chubb as they move around the edge a little bit there. I think that from the Broncos perspective is also one of the biggest matchups in this game, just from the standpoint of, look, you want to put the ball in Zach Wilson's hands as much as possible, right? I mean, the Broncos have been very good at stopping the run this year, and that's large in part because Baron Browning is a very good edge setter out there. I mean, I know he's known for his get off and his pass rush and a lot of, the Von Miller like sack dances and things like that. But certainly he's very good at setting the edge. So if the Broncos can continue to be well equipped against the run, putting the ball in Zach Wilson's hands, we've seen that play into their favor all throughout the season, no matter who they're playing against. If you can put the ball in the opposing quarterback's hands and make him have to beat you, obviously, they've been susceptible either way because the offense hasn't scored points. But defensively, when they're stopping the run, that pass rush can pin its ears back. plays into the secondary's hands as well, being able to be a bit more aggressive if you get into long down and distance situations. So I'm also looking from that perspective of the Broncos defensive front going up against the Jets offensive line. Can they stop the run in this game and force the ball into Zach Wilson's hands? And at that point, you're looking at playing to your defensive strength, the secondary, the pass rush, and really rallying up to the line of scrimmage with those linebackers and being able to be aggressive instead of being on your heels at all times. If the Jets have a successful running game, the Broncos are going to be a bit on their heels. And at that point, that could open up the shots downfield to guys like Corey Davis, Garrett Wilson. So I think definitely, Cody, it's the defensive front for the Denver Broncos against that Jets offensive line, and specifically that wide zone scheme. Can they shut it down early on in this game and force the ball into Zach Wilson's hands?
I think that's an ideal thing for the Broncos to have to try to do defensively. I do imagine, though, if they do look to take any shots in the passing game, they'll probably look to go after rookie cornerback Damari Mathis, who I thought still played well against the Chargers, but because he's a rookie and he's not named Patrick Surtain, they may look to target him with guys like Corey Davis, who has speed to get behind defenses. And also, I mean, even Braxton Berrios has emerged as one of those little under the radar guys. I know this week he's been dealing with a little bit of a back issue. We'll see how things line up there. But then from another perspective, gentlemen, I'll just kind of highlight one matchup I have my eye on here. Well, I was kind of keeping an eye on it as well. Can the Broncos run the football? Can Latavius Murray and Melvin Gordon? Melvin will get the start in this game for the Broncos offense on Sunday, but can they find a way to have success getting the run game going? And John, to be honest with you, the Broncos' longest rush this season has been 18 total yards. They have not been able to be very balanced nor consistent with their rushing attack this season. And if they can find a way to get the run game going, I think I would feel a little bit better about the Broncos' chances. But against the guys like Rankins, against the other guys that you mentioned as well with Quinnen Williams, the linebacker play with Quincy Williams, and even Quan Alexander, for me personally, I think that'll be a little bit of a task that we have our eyes on here for Sunday's game. But if you're a Broncos fan, a Jets fan, one thing we are going to do coming up here in just a moment is we're going to talk about, from a Broncos perspective and a Jets perspective, how these teams can come away from Sunday's game with a win. Can the Jets move to 5-2 on the season, and will the Broncos drop to 2-5, or can Denver try to get one step closer as they approach the bye week? That's something we'll dive into coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let us tell you about SimpliSafe, the other sponsor of today's Locked On Podcast Network crossover special. And all right, here's a sports analogy for you, those who are listening or those who are watching on YouTube. When it comes to burglars, your home is like the end zone, and you need the absolute strongest defense that you can muster. And this is why I use and trust SimpliSafe Home Security. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters, and it's cutting-edge technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back, so you always know that your home is safe. SimpliSafe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alerts you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Our monitoring experts use proprietary advanced response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real, so you can get the highest priority police dispatch. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at SimpliSafe.com/LockedOnNFL. Save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit SimpliSafe.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. As we jump into the fourth quarter action on today's Locked On Podcast Network crossover special between Locked On Jets and Locked On Broncos. Thank you so much if you're a Broncos or a Jets fan for tuning in and making Locked On Broncos or Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every single day in your favorite podcasting providers, or whether you watch on YouTube. Gentlemen, let's continue the conversation here. Now shifting the focus of today's crossover to how these teams can win on Sunday. So John, from a Locked On Jets perspective, what do the New York Jets have to do? What's the most essential part of their game plan to get them to go to 5-2 on the season, to keep Jets fans even more excited about what's to come?
I feel like one of these like old football analysts who's going to say establish the run, because I usually hate it when they say that, but that's the way this Jets team is built. Breece Hall has become the guy on offense, and I said it earlier, there really aren't many running backs. And, I feel, generic football analyst, oh, you got to run the ball, build it around you. Well, it's not really the way the NFL works for most teams, but the Jets are kind of an exception these days. And, if they didn't have Breece Hall. I'm not sure they'd be able to run the ball effectively. I think this is a very stout Denver defense. But the way he's looked the last couple of weeks, and it's not just in the run game. Now in the receiving game, he's had some drops this year, but he's also begun to contribute there. Like I said, last week or 2 weeks ago, he had 100 yards receiving. I think it's Breece Hall keeping them out of bad downs and distances. I think that you get into a situation where Zach Wilson's facing 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10 against this pass rush. That's where you could get into trouble because he's still a young quarterback. He's still susceptible to making mistakes. I think that on the defensive line, they just need to keep doing what they're doing. I think that's an area where maybe the Jets have a little bit of an edge because I know the Broncos have had, a little inconsistency there. So, I mean, I think really comes down to running the ball effectively, moving the chains. And, I think you're trying to, on the offensive side, you're trying to wear Denver down and hopefully maybe pop a few in the second half. And, on the defensive side, just keep being tenacious on the defensive line.
Hey, tenacious D. Robert Saleh is very, very emphatic about defense, being able to buckle down. And like we said, I think even Sayre and I last year, when we talked about the matchup after the fact, and we saw that there were some of the reports coming out that, people are growing tired of Robert Saleh. It's like, man, that's if people are growing tired, I mean, they're going to miss out on a really good coach. And so far, the Jets are in a very good position. I mean, when you can start off the year with Joe Flacco as your quarterback, former Bronco Hall of Famer, by the way, I think that the optics aren't always pretty, but when Zach Wilson came in and they finally started running the football, you could definitely see things clicking for the New York Jets offense. And you know what? You get a win over the Miami Dolphins, who everyone pretty much put as the top dog alongside Buffalo inside the division. All of a sudden, who would have thought? The Jets and the Bills right now, the top teams in the AFC East. We'll look forward to seeing how that plays out. But now flipping the script a little bit, Sayre, from a Locked On Broncos perspective, if Denver is going to find a way to win their 3rd game of the season, drop this losing streak that they're going through right now, what is it that they have to do?
Well, Cody, they got to score at least 17 points, right? I mean, that seems to be the key right now for the Denver Broncos. No, all kidding aside, I mean, the offense has to find a way to get things going. The defense has done its job almost every single week. It feels like they're doing the exact same thing. I mean, nobody can believe it watching this defense play. You look at a top 5 scoring defense in the NFL, the fact that they're able to do that, given the fact that the Broncos are so incompetent offensively these days. I mean, the 3 and outs, the inability to score in the red zone, the defense is constantly on the field, and yet they're constantly coming up big with stops or what have you. So, I mean, definitely the Broncos offense. I mean, again, just like John said, you hate to sound like, just super, it's super simple. You got to score points, right? I mean, you have to put up at least 20 to 24 points, I think, in a game before anybody can feel confident about saying, oh, yeah, the Broncos could win this game if, so-and-so wins a matchup, right? I mean, ultimately, the defense has been winning matchups, haven't they? The defense has been doing their job. They've been getting a ridiculous amount of pressures. I think I saw like 60 some odd pressures in the last handful of games here from this Denver defense. They're putting heat on the quarterback. They're creating turnovers. They're forcing guys like Justin Herbert to throw 57 passes in a game. First quarterback in NFL history to throw that many passes in a game with 0 touchdowns and win. The defense is doing their part. If the Broncos offense can't get anything going, it's not going to matter. So we talk about all these matchups defensively and offensively. Ultimately, what it comes down to, can the Broncos score? I mean, it's so simple and sounds so stupid, but that's where we are at this point in the season. They can't score points. They have been absolutely incompetent on that side of the ball. They haven't been able to execute basic things. They haven't been able to execute in crunch time. They haven't been able to execute in the red zone, 3rd down. It's all been really bad. So, I mean, hey, John, for the Jets fans listening, that's where the Broncos are at right now. So as the Broncos have been the get right team for a lot of teams throughout the season, unfortunately, now they're looking to be the get right team against the Jets, coming home, playing a matchup there where they've been pretty good this season. So hopefully, Cody, that's the case. I mean, even if it's in a losing effort, if the offense can get back on track, maybe the fans will get back on board.
Well, that's definitely one of the bigger questions, because the moment you said that they have to score 20 to 24 points, I was like, oh, how are they going to score? For them, we've been asking, like, how can they score 13, 14 points, right? And field goals aren't just going to be the way they do it. You have to find a way to punch it in, whether it's in the rushing game, whether it's in the passing game. And it has definitely been a little bit pressure-based here in Denver. And so when you look at how aggressive Robert Saleh and the New York Jets defense is and how disciplined they've been playing, not to mention, we didn't even bring him up, Sauce Gardner's playing at a very high level right now as a rookie. I know a lot of people are talking about Tariq Woolen in Seattle, but Sauce Gardner's playing some lockdown football at the cornerback position. So, I think we're going to see for both defenses two really dang good cornerbacks. How do they fare? How does Sauce Gardner fare against Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy? To me, that's something I'm looking forward to seeing here this week. Sunday, 2:25 p.m. Mountain Time, 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're on the East Coast as a Jets fan as well, make sure you tune into Locked On Jets, hosted by John Butchko every single day. If you're a Jets fan, and if you're a Broncos fan tuning in, you can get Locked On Broncos every single day as well. Free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format, or whether you watch both of these shows on YouTube. Do us all a favor, hit the subscribe or that follow button so you never miss out on a day's worth of New York Jets or Denver Broncos news, content, coverage, and more. We'll see you after kickoff.